if you want to retire in your early 50s, I don't think you necessarily need to be debt free as long as your financial plan can support that debt obligation.
Welcome to Upticks with Jake Falcon, founder and CEO of Falcon Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, we help high net worth individuals overcome financial complexities. We do this by enhancing financial literacy and discussing topics in a language free from industry jargon. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to Upticks with Jake and Cory. Cory, welcome back to the show.
Jake, thank you for having me back.
Cory, we've got a very exciting topic today talking about retiring at 50. But before we dive in, do you have any quick updates or anything you want to share with the audience today?
We've got snow on the ground in Kansas City, Jake, and I think that snow days are the best days to get to work.
I really liked your post.
Thank you.
You know what bothers me? This is a little pet peeve, Cory, is that, and our team's great, so this isn't a knock on our team. This is just humans. We live in the Midwest. You know what happens every year in the Midwest?
Snows.
It snows. And I don't know why people use that as an excuse to not show up to work. Now, I want to be very clear here, though. Safety should always be number one priority. The reality is we all take a risk getting in a car every single day.
That's right.
So, of course, you need to weigh that risk. But I'll tell you a little quick story. I moved here from Texas, Cory. I didn't really know what bad snow was till I moved here. And I had a rear-wheel drive BMW 3 Series. I thought I was cool.
I bet you were cool. I bet you were cool.
Were we working together yet?
Yes, actually, we were. I remember that car.
And I got stuck in the snow one night, leaving work. I worked all day. Cory, must have been 3-4 times. I got stuck. Like, literally thought I wasn't going to get out of the snow, like going home. It was scary. Like traumatizing. Like, I remember this. And I told myself, Cory, this isn't going to happen again. I said, I almost immediately, not immediately, but soon after, I bought a 4-wheel drive SUV tank that could get me anywhere. No more reason for a rear-wheel drive car. Yes. And so my point is, if you're going to live somewhere, it's like I grew up in West Texas. I never didn't show up because it was windy.
Yeah.
Windy there.
Right. Yes.
So that's my pet peeve.
I hear you. You know what's funny is
like,
I've got a very similar story for when I made a very similar commitment to myself that maybe I'll save that one, Jake, till the next time it snows.
Yeah, we don't want to go into it. I don't want to sound like a crotchety old man here.
That's exactly right.
I just, I'll get, it's high school golf. They didn't cancel golf because the wind blew.
Yep.
We played golf in the wind.
That's right.
Show up.
That's right. That's part of being a professional.
Safely show up. You and I are in the office today. We're working. All right, Cory. Let's get it. Let's play.
That's it. It was your update, Jake. Let's play ball. Let's do it.
Let's play ball. I love this topic, Cory. So today's topic is, can you really retire at 50? 50. And, it's a dream for many millennials to do this. I can tell you, Cory, from 19 years now and thousands of meetings, I have a lot of clients that retired at or near 50, believe it or not. Not like hundreds, but I have a lot. And actually, I just met with a young lady yesterday who's a client. Her plan says to retire at 51. And I believe her husband will be 55. And what's funny about this is I told her this. She has a lot of energy. Like, she's very type A personality. And I was like, what are you going to do retiring at 51? Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, it's a good question.
She already had it mapped out. Like, she teaches gymnastics, and that's what she or not teaches, she judges. So she's like, I judge gymnastics now, like for fun, like on the side, but that's what I'll do more of. And she already has a plan. So my point is, let's get into that first, and then we can go into the numbers and some. We've got some very important tips and topics to bring up around this. But number one, like I always start with, what I loved about this is she knew what her next purpose was going to be. I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make if you want to retire at 50 is not knowing what you're going to do with that recaptured time. Because here's the deal. If you retired 50, I'm telling you, that's not the norm. And most of your friends and people that you want to hang out with, you know what they're doing?
Working.
They're going to work. And so you're gonna be on this island. You're either gonna have to start hanging out with a bunch of 65-year-olds at 50, right?
Might not be so bad, but
Might not be
you're
so
right.
bad. Or you need to figure out what is that new purpose? Are you gonna judge gymnastics? Are you going to get a part-time job? Are you gonna start a business and become an entrepreneur? Whatever that is, you need to think about it and plan for it and have that mapped out. I got a quick personal story on purpose. Can I share that?
Please, let's hear
And
it.
I am such a big believer in purpose, Corey. I am confident that I would not have met my wife, Rachel,
Mm.
if I didn't think about purpose. I had a coach. Everybody, a lot of my clients know I was dating a lot, dated a lot of girls, never found the right one, kind of whiny about it. You know this.
Oh, I know.
This coach sat me down, Corey, and she said, as a female coach, she said, you need to define what kind of man you want to be. And you need to wake up every day and work towards being that man. And I'm telling you, Corey, a switch popped off and I started thinking about the man I wanted to be. And our follow-up meeting was she said, you need to start thinking about the woman you want to be with and make those guidelines. And I kind of did that a little bit, but in that in between time, I met Rachel. And I think I would argue she saw that I had a purpose and I knew who I was and what I wanted to be. And I would argue that's what attracted her to me. Credit to me.
Credit to you. We need to get Rachel on the podcast to corroborate that story, Jake. But I
That's
do
right.
think that's a great point, though, because you're right. I mean, if we take it, if we step back for a moment, right? If I think Jake about retiring at 50, that's 15 years from now for me. So what that would mean, though, is that 15 years from now, I'm not doing this anymore. We're not recording upticks, Jake. I'm not meeting with clients. I'm not coming to this office anymore. I've just got each day in front of me to figure out how I want to fill my time. So I think that the purpose is crucial because it is like that's for me that's so difficult to even think through, Jake, at this point. Like 15 years from now, if I wasn't working anymore, what would I be doing? But I know if at 45 years old that retiring at 50 is the goal, it's going to be time for me to get serious about it. But a big part of that would be how am I going to spend my time each day? Because you could be retired for 30 or 40 years if you retired 50 years old. 30 or
Right.
40 years.
Right. That's good. So again,
You can only play
purpose.
so much golf. Those grandkids are only going to be so young for so long and only want to spend so much time with their grandparents.
Yeah.
It's a reality.
Yes. So purpose is so important. Now we are wealth advisors. Let's talk about some money. Right. So
Yes.
let's talk about the money involved. And I've got two things. There's more to this, but there's two things that I wanted to bring up on this.
Okay.
Number one, which is probably obvious, is you've got to make sure that your financial plan is feasible. Like you've got to make sure that you are saving enough and you'll have enough to sustain your lifestyle for 40 years, which is really, who deals with this is professional athletes, right?
Yep.
Because they typically retire at 30 or 40 and then they all their money's got to last them the next 40 years plus. So you've got to make sure that you are saving an appropriate amount so that your nest egg, if you're not going to work, or you're certainly maybe not going to make as much money as you're making now, that's got to last you. So that's number one. And that's easy for us to do. The hard part is you've got to forecast how much money you're going to need and you've got to be honest with yourself. You can't just say, I'm going to cut my lifestyle in half or I'm going to live in a van down by the river. Like maybe you
Right.
will, but I don't see that happening a lot actually. And then do you have thoughts on that before I go into the second point?
I do, and I think the savings point that you made, Jake, I would just go as far as saying that if your goal is to retire at 50 years old, the rate at which you're going to need to save is going to be in excess of ordinary savings rates, in excess of what your coworker or someone else might suggest as a general rule of thumb. I'm not going to go as far as saying what that needs to be, but I'm confident that if your goal is to retire at 50, when a lot of people work until 65 or 70, you're going to need to save more than the average person.
Yeah, think about it. You're right. You're 12 years away from being eligible to start Social Security. You're 15 years away from Medicare,
Yep.
right? So it's okay. You can do it. But my point is, you need to plan accordingly and you need to make sure that you have enough. You got to have a big, healthy nest egg. And you're right, Corey. Putting 3% in your 401k is probably not going to cut it. Like
No.
you're gonna have to turbocharge that sucker. You're gonna have to max it out according to the IRS limits. Then you're probably gonna have to dump tons of money in a brokerage account. And that was my second point I wanted to make. Not only is feasibility or do you have enough, accessibility is the probably second biggest critical factor for someone retiring at 50. Here's the deal. You are pumping money in your 401k pre-tax. Good for you. The problem is the IRS doesn't let you tap that until you're 59 and a half or 55 if you leave it in your company's plan and you leave your company in that year. Now, there is another somewhat secretive rule out there, Corey. I'll whisper, a
Ooh,
little bit secret. Shh.
okay.
There's the secret. It's called 72T. And this is the IRS code for it. You can access your retirement account prior to turning 59 and a half or 50. However, it's very strict. And why don't you go over the rules of the road, Corey? Because I don't want to just get on my soapbox. Go ahead.
Okay, let's do it. So the 72T, it is effectively something in the tax code that allows someone to take distributions from a pre-tax IRA. Somebody retires, roll over their 401k to an IRA. They can access that money without any penalties, regardless of their age. But like you said, there's rules of the road there. Several keys involved. First and foremost would be to work with a professional if you're going to try to establish this, because you don't want to make a mistake and do this the wrong way. But it is a matter of figuring out the account balance, using the proper IRS calculations to determine what dollar amount you could pull out of the account each year without penalty, and making sure that the account is set up and structured properly so you're not adding any more dollars or even pennies to the same account that you're taking these distributions from, and you're not taking any distributions by a penny or more above and beyond what's been mapped out. So again, there's a lot of moving parts, and the key there is it can be done, but also that you should work with a professional that's done it before, because you don't want to have to back pay IRS penalties.
Right. Right. And the idea again, you can't once you lock this in, you can't
Yes.
typically adjust it.
Change
There's
it.
one again, there's a lot of nuance to it, but my point is you can do it. You can't pull out whatever you want. The federal government sets the rate at what you could pull out. So you need to meet with a qualified wealth advisor, ideally a chartered retirement planning counselor, someone who's done this. And literally, Corey, I've done this many, many, many times, and you have as well with clients. So
Yep.
I have clients that are doing it right now. I have a client that I could think of right
Same.
now that has the 72T. And so it's fine. I've done it. And I've done it for a client. I think she retired, Corey, at 50, and we did it 50 or
Yes.
51. And it worked out beautifully for her. There is a way, it's very restrictive. You don't want to get it wrong because you could pay some serious penalties, but there is a way to do it. So you need to incorporate that in your financial plan. So again, feasibility, do you have enough in your nest egg? Accessibility, how are you going to get access? So again, my tip for somebody that wants to retire at 50 is to build up a brokerage account now. We call it a bridge fund. So not only do you want to max out your 401k more than likely, but you also want to build up a brokerage that is basically taxed as you go, but there are no restrictions to when you can pull the money out. The people that do retire in their early 50s, Corey, they typically have a sizable brokerage that allows them to bridge that gap. And so
Yep.
again, this show's not advice. You need to meet with us one-on-one to actually get some real advice. But my point is make sure you can not only have enough, but you got to know how you can access it. Corey, what else do you want to talk about with people retiring at age 50? Do you have any other ideas?
Yeah. So first, let me share a quick story, and then I do, Jake, just because it's aligned with what you talked about. I shared a post on this maybe a week ago on LinkedIn, and I got some traction. I heard from some people about it because I talked about a client review meeting that I had with a client that retired in her late 40s.
Wow.
And this client was paying $85 a month for health insurance, which is really where I want to go with this next, Jake, is healthcare. But that was the point was, how expensive healthcare will be, IRS penalties if I access my money early. These are some of the roadblocks for why someone might not retire at 50. But the point I was really sharing is that, yes, it can be done, right? This whole show is, can you really retire at 50? Yes, you can if you plan for it properly. But this particular client, Jake, we've set up a 72T. That's creating taxable income. It's helping with the healthcare subsidies. There's brokerage account dollars that can be accessed. Those are invested in a very specific way to make sure that it's funding the income the client needs, and it's working just fine. And she retired in her late 40s and is still retired today comfortably, and things are moving in the right direction. But there was a lot of planning involved to get to that. And it's not just a decision that somebody makes on a whim to say, okay, I'm 50, I'm ready to retire. You need to be in that position at that time in order to make it work.
Right. And you're right, Corey. And I love that you brought up health insurance because you definitely need to have that accounted for. But I think
Yep.
some people, it scares them and they think it's going to be $4,000 a month or whatever. And that's not always the case, like you said. So
Correct.
you just want to be mindful of that. You want to meet with a health insurance agent to get all that mapped out prior so you know what it's going to cost you. Then we can work that into your financial plan to basically project that out and see what that's going to cost you. So that's really good. So health insurance, like I said, is a very, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a very
Yep.
important piece that you need to consider. So you got to make sure you've got enough money to retire at 50. You got to make sure you can access it. Then, of course, you want to take care of your health insurance. I want to talk a little bit about debt, Corey. How would you
Mm.
advise someone that's in their early 50s and they still have a mortgage, a car payment, student loans, maybe, or credit cards? What do you talk about with debt, someone looking to retire at 50?
Yeah, the reality is I think some of it depends upon the type of debt, right? If somebody has a low interest rate mortgage, that's a whole lot different than somebody having 50 grand on a revolving credit card that's charging 25% interest, right? There's a big difference there. So the way I would think about that is really factoring it into the financial plan, right? Factoring it into the cash flow, whether or not you pay off the mortgage, whether or not you pay off the student loans, what type of income your portfolio is going to generate to be able to service those expenses. But it really does boil down to the numbers, right? There's the financial aspect of it. There, of course, is also an emotional impact. Like I get it, right? Somebody going into retirement without a mortgage is something that I think sounds appealing to a lot of people, but it doesn't always mean that you need to pay off your mortgage before you retire.
Yeah,
The
and well,
Go ahead.
let me talk about that real quick. So
Yep.
that's tricky because here's the deal.
Mhm.
And this debt conversation right now applies to anyone.
'Kay.
There's two things happening with debt. There's the math piece of debt, and then there's the emotional piece of debt. And that's what you just hit on. That's why I wanted to talk about this. I just met with a new client yesterday also. And, you know, she understands, but she had a question. Like her mortgage, Corey, is like, I think it's in the 2 or 3%, right? And so she's like, do I pay it off or do I invest the money? And the math, there is no guarantee, right? In either direction, right? There's no guarantee if she pays off the mortgage, that's the right decision, or if she invests the money, that's the right decision. But the concept that the general thought behind debt is that if your investments can average you more than that debt's costing you, and I got another point here, and that debt is attached to a appreciating asset like a
Mm.
home, then you're typically setting yourself up to potentially have a better financial plan down the road. Again, there's no guarantee. And again, this isn't advice. So some clients, Corey, we do tell them to pay off their mortgage
Yep.
or pay cash for a house. And some we say to mortgage it. So we will crunch the numbers knowing there's no guarantee. But I want to challenge our audience to not make, like, I just want to be debt free, Corey. I don't care. I was like, well,
Yeah, don't be
okay.
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's okay. But are you making you? I just want to bring to our clients' attention. Okay, you want to be debt free. That's fine. We'll plug it into your plan. If your plan works, I just want you to know the consequences of your decision. Your financial plan might not be as good, but that's okay. Realize you're making an emotional decision, not the right decision. It's an emotional decision. But my point is that might not be right or wrong.
Mm.
So you got to plug that in with debt. So again, a lot of people have bias against debt where they don't like it. It makes them sick. They don't like owing anybody anything. I get it. However, we want to just show you the math on it. That's all we care about. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter to me if a client pays off their mortgage. It doesn't really matter. I don't care.
Right.
All
Right.
I care, all I care about, Corey, is that their financial plan works the way that they
That's
want it
right.
to work. And I also care about that they understand the decision they're making and the consequences, good or bad.
That's right. Because debt is a tool, but debt is not a lifestyle. And I can't repeat that enough. I
That's a
feel like
good
I've said it
one.
a lot. I'll keep saying it. But I also think, Jake, that,
What do you mean by that? What do you mean debt's not a lifestyle? I like that.
I mean that a lifestyle of being in perpetual debt or a lifestyle of spending money that you effectively don't have yet is not. Debt can be a great tool. There can be times where it makes sense to do that, but the idea of just living on more income than you have coming in, one way or the other, is the lifestyle
Interesting.
of debt that I'm suggesting.
S
We
so let
have
me ask
we
you
have
this. Let me ask you this. Your
please.
dad.
Yep.
So are you telling me you wanna leave Daisy and you and Cassie have no debt? Is that what you're saying? Like when you're hopefully 50 years from now or whatever, Corey, like, are you saying you don't wanna have a mortgage ever? Or like, not ever, but like, is that your goal then to be debt free? Because I don't know if that's my goal, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's a good. No, just being debt free is not inherently the goal. Let me give you an example, Jake. That might help
Well,
to
you
drive
said
it
debt
home a
is
little
not a
bit.
lifestyle.
Yeah, but I said it is a tool.
Okay.
So a perfect example. Let me give you an example. In 2020, I bought my first house. Mortgage rates were low. That was a decision to use the tool of debt to buy a home because I didn't have enough cash to just buy the house I wanted to cash. So I chose the debt. I chose the mortgage. And in the same year, Jake, I also chose to get a loan through a bank to buy more equity in this business and Falcon Wealth Advisors. And
Good decision, Cory.
that was a choice. That was a tool, again, with interest rates being where they were. But I did not do any of that, Jake, with the goal of saying, as soon as this loan gets paid off, I'm going to go and borrow more money. I did it as saying, this is a strategic investment and the timing is
Ah,
right. So
I
that's what I
see.
mean when I say it's a tool. But I think that
I see. So let's because that's a big problem. Not you, but like people with credit cards, Cory, they'll pay
mm,
them off and then they'll ring them all back up again.
right.
And they'll not I'm not saying they pay them off every month. I'm saying they may have taken 4 years to pay off their credit card debt, Cory, but then they just get in the same problem again. That's
Yes,
what you're saying.
that's
That's
where it's
using
a
debt as a
lifestyle.
lifestyle. Yeah, I gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that way. And it's because I mean, really, if I go and use a credit card, Jake, and if I buy something that I don't have the cash to cover, I'm basically just borrowing from my own future. I'm borrowing from my future, and I'm obligating myself and locking myself in today for something in the future if I'm borrowing this money. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad or right or wrong. I'm just saying that's if we think about it that way, I think it changes the calculus a little bit. And I also think though, Jake, to your point, that your retiring right group on Facebook, the community that you've created there, you
Ah,
asked the
nice one.
question. You said, what are money rules that you live by? And I commented and I said, one of my money rules to live by, Jake, is that I'm not going to pay off my low mortgage rate early, regardless of how good I might think it makes me feel.
That's good, Cory. Good. So, and again, but I would argue that that is good, not to let your emotions dictate your
Yes,
investment decisions or your
me too.
financial decisions. Some people would say, I don't care about that. And I want to
Mm.
sleep better knowing that I don't have debt. And my point is, as long as your financial plan works, maybe that's okay. But I
We want you
appreciate
to
that.
sleep at night and we want your plan to work.
Right, right. So good point, Cory, and good quick plug. I do have a Facebook group out there called Retiring Right. If we're friends on Facebook, let me know. I'll get you added to the group. We talk more in depth on retirement in that group. So thank you, Cory, for that. Also,
Welcome.
quick plug. I'm very active on Instagram now, Cory. If you want to give me a follow, it's Jake_Falcon_CRPC. And if you want more content, simply message me RR, literally the letters RR, and I'll send you a complimentary ebook of my best-selling book, Retiring Right: Smart Steps for Exiting Corporate America. Thank you, Cory, on that one. Quick
You're
commercial
welcome.
there.
When you see the letters RR now, Jake, do you think retiring right or do you think railroad?
Retiring Right.
Yeah. I used to always think railroad when I would see RR, but now I think retiring right.
Thank you, Cory. Thank you.
You got it.
So bringing it back to our topic, though, Cory.
Yes.
So again, if you want to retire in your early 50s, I don't think you necessarily need to be debt free as long as your financial plan can support that debt obligation. So again, don't think that you need to have everything paid off because again, if you've got a mortgage at 3% and you want to retire at 50, Cory, it may make more sense to put more money in a brokerage account so you can have cash flow versus paying off that low interest mortgage and not having the cash flow. So again, those are critical decisions that could
They
make or
are.
break your ability to retire. I mean, it's that serious for people. Now, some people it doesn't matter. They have enough money where it doesn't matter if they paid off or not. And that's when we ultimately come to the conclusion: do what you want. For some clients, it's like, look, or we're splitting hairs, especially now with mortgages so much higher than they were. If somebody wants to get a mortgage or pay cash, Cory, now I tell them they're splitting hairs today. I mean, a mortgage rate's over 6%. It's a typical target return is going to run anywhere from 5 to 8%. So I'm like, you know what? We're splitting hairs and there's no guarantee in either option. So
That's right.
you don't want to have a mortgage, you got the cash and the plan works. Let's do it. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with
That's
that.
right.
Because again, it's not my plan, it's their plan.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why I think, though, this subject of, can I really retire at 50? The answer to that is yes, with proper planning. But I think if somebody's in their 40s and they are planning on retiring at 50, the time to establish a financial plan is right now if you don't already have one. If someone's in their 30s or their 20s and they want to retire at 50, the time to establish a plan is right now.
yes.
The closer you wait till 50, the more reasons you're going to find that you should have started that planning conversation sooner, in my experience.
Right. Right. That's another quick call to action, Cory. If you're listening to this, are watching this and you want to retire at 50, Cory's out there on LinkedIn. That's, or now you're on all of them, aren't you?
That's right.
On all
You
the
can find me
things.
on LinkedIn, on Instagram at Cory Bittner KC. I'll accept your Facebook friend request too.
If you want to message us on a social media platform, just message us 50 and we'll know what you're talking about, 50, and we'll have a conversation about it. We'll set up a private meeting and we'll talk about what you need to do to retire at 50 or in your early 50s in there. And some people, it's not realistic, and that's okay too. We'll tell you that. We'll say,
Correct.
look, you can't do it. You can't do it unless you get a second job or do X, Y, Z. We'll tell you what you need to do, but maybe it's 55, Cory, or maybe it's 60, and then at least you know. At least you know where you stand in there. But but again, let's go full circle, Cory. It's got to come back to that purpose. That's
Yep.
the first question I would ask somebody, or I do ask, and that's what I asked my client yesterday. Why do you want to retire at 51? You have so much energy. Why do you want to retire? I don't want to retire at 51. I'm
Right.
43. I don't
Yep.
want to retire in 8 years or 7 years at 50. No way.
Yeah.
Although
What
what
in
I
the
do too
world
much.
would you do, Jake? If you
Drive
weren't
my wife
coming here, if
crazy.
we didn't work together, what would you be doing every day? You'd be driving your wife crazy. I'm just
I
kidding.
would be driving my wife crazy. I don't know what I would do. This is what I wake up and want to do. This is why I
Yep.
drove in hazardous conditions, because not because I don't love being with my wife at home, but because
Right.
I wanted to come here. And I work most effectively in the office today. I do, at least. And so I wanted to show up for my team, show up for my clients, show up for you, Cory,
And show up for
and
yourself.
show for myself. And this is what I love doing. So
Same.
I think that's a good place, though. Again, got to have enough money, got to have accessibility, got to have your health insurance. And like you just kind of wrapped it up with, Cory, let's meet with a wealth advisor, meet with somebody that's done this before, meet with somebody that's helped other clients retire at 50, and talk about what that situation needs to look like for you to do it. We can go over that
Yes.
with you. We're happy to.
One other quick point I just want to share too, Jake. I've seen this play out. I'm sure you have too. Is that it's also, if you are planning to retire at 50 or 55, whatever the age might be, it's also very freeing for people if they have the plan in place, if they've put themselves in the position to be able to retire then. But in my experience, Jake, it's interesting that sometimes people find that when they get there, they're not quite ready to retire. Right? They're ready
Right?
to keep going, but because they've put themselves in that
Mm,
position
good
of
point.
strength as far as their plan goes, it allows them to live their life and spend time with their family and even do their work, on a day-to-day basis a bit more freely, because you're doing it because you want to make an impact, and you're doing it because of your purpose, not because you have to.
Right. Right.
And that
Right.
totally flips the script for people.
And that's probably why I don't want to retire, Cory, because I don't have to. Like, I don't have to be here. Not that I'm financially independent. I guess I technically still need to earn a wage, but I also own the company. So
Right.
it's not like I'm an
Same.
employee, right? So we're owners, so we're choosing to be here. It's probably why we don't want to retire. But
In
again,
fact, that
when you
motivates me to work harder, not the opposite, Jake.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it does.
And when you become financially independent, so when we tell you need $3 million to retire, and you're at 3 million, you're right. People will balk and they'll say, "I don't want to retire." It's like, okay, don't retire. Your
Great.
plan's just going to look
Every
better.
6 months you keep working is just gonna make your plan look better.
It's going to look that much better. It's going to look better. Good, good, Cory. I want to hear some personal recommendations. But first, thank you all for tuning in. As always, please like and share our content. 5-star rating, thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. The whole point of Upticks is we want to enhance financial literacy. So please like and share our content. Cory, you got any personal recs for our audience today?
I've got 2. One you've already shared, Jake, but I have gotten deeper in the Madoff, The Final Word, the book.
Yep.
It's so good. It is really good.
Everybody
And
needs to read that book.
I think that's good reading. And as far as a TV show goes, is the TV show Severance. I know a lot of people are watching that right now. It's on Apple TV. Cassie and I watched this a few years ago. There's a new season that came out, but it's really interesting, Jake, because the idea, especially in the technologically advanced world, is that people can get a chip planted in their brain that gives them work-life balance. So it'd be like, Jake, you walk into this building, you don't know what happens while you're here. Next thing you know, you're walking out back to your car to go home to your wife. But it creates another Jake in a sense, right? The
Oh,
person
wow.
working on the inside doesn't know what Jake on the outside is doing, and vice versa. So
That's
super
what that show's
interesting.
about?
Yeah, it's very interesting and compelling. Yes.
Do you think I would like that? I've never watched it. Rachel
Yes.
said I would
I'm
like
sure
it.
you would. I'm
Maybe
confident
I
you
need
would.
to maybe I need to go watch it.
Super interesting.
For me, what do I personal? I'm learning to play the piano.
Mm.
I got into chords, so I'm real excited. I know the C chord, the A minor. You know anything
Mhm.
about that chord? The G chord, F chord.
I know a little bit, not enough to play him.
So that's been very cool. because I'm tired of staring at screens.
Yeah, I hear
So
you.
I really enjoy that. And yeah, just I keep reading a ton of books. So just more books, piano. I can't wait for spring. I don't This winter has felt really long to me for some reasons, maybe because I don't know, but I'm ready for golf season. So I'm excited for that to start. So stay tuned. Hopefully I get some golf in my future.
I hope so too. You got around in this year though, right?
I did
In
play
2020,
once.
you played
Yeah, I
once.
think I
All right,
shot
there you go.
78. Think I shot 78. Pretty good for me.
It's pretty good. It's February 12th. You've already got a 78 in. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. So we'll keep it. We'll hopefully keep that rolling. All right. Well, thank you again, Cory, for joining me as always, and thank you all for tuning in. We hope you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Upticks. Click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. Also, be sure to visit our website, falconwealthadvisors.com, and click the Contact Us button if you'd like to meet with Jake and his team.